Welcome to Everything Hertz. My name is Dan Quintana from the University of Oslo, and I am here with James Heathers from Northeastern University for a very special Everything Hertz episode. How are you, James?
Uh, I'm adorable. We're finally here. We spent an awful lot of time talking about what are we going to do for our 50th episode, and you wanted to have a variety of you had a variety of different things that you wanted to try. None of them were good ideas, and then I convinced you to do this. You originally said it's terrible. No one will love us. No one will pay attention, and that will hurt my feelings. And I'm a very special boy, and I don't like having my feelings hurt. And then we tested out live casting, and you immediately became a convert. You went, "This is great. I love it. I love it. It's so much fun. I like seeing my enormous swollen foreign scone on the internet. This suits me down to the ground." And here we are.
Here we
That's
are.
50, baby.
We are doing Hertz 50. If you are listening, if you're listening live, make sure you use the Hertz 50 hashtag to get involved with the episode. Let us know what you.
Now, that's not because we're cool. That's because we've actually figured out that if you do that, we can find out what's going on if you do that.
Let us know what's going on, and let us know where you're listening from as well. I think that'd be cool to see where we're getting some listeners from. But if you are, we're also recording this as a normal podcast episode. So if you're listening to the audio thinking, what the hell are they talking about? We're actually going to post the video of us doing this live episode as well. We'll post a link to the video so you can watch back if you're interested. Yeah, it'll all be there as per normal.
I think if you did that, you would be a sick person. Because the video is, instead of the audio of two swollen whitish male heads talking, you now have the horrifying accompanying cues to go with it, and it's exactly what you'd expect. The one thing that will change is normally when there's a gap that's immediately followed by cackling, it's because I'm trying to make Dan laugh and make him sound unprofessional and ridiculous, and it's really easy most of the time.
It's going to be a bit trickier now. We'll see how we go.
It's going to be harder. It's going to be harder to get away with it, but I'm going to endeavor to try. I can't promise to be any less annoying than usual. I guess we're just going to see what happens.
We'll see what happens. But speaking of annoying and frustrating things, you sent me a
great lead.
You sent me a one of those links when you read it and you have to double check, thinking, am I reading satire? What am I actually reading here? And this
until you realize there's no The Onion for science.
That'd be great, actually.
Serious. Oh, the Science Onion? What would the Science Onion be called? The Allium.
Yeah.
Now someone's going to tell me that exists somewhere.
Probably. Now for this link that you sent me, the title of this blog post was "Should Grad Students Publish?" Yeah.
Should publish. Where was that published itself, Dan? Give all the nice people something approaching background on this, because every time you have to understand it, we have a normal conversation unrelated to the podcast, and occasionally I find things and I use them to interfere with Daniel's blood pressure, because that kind of thing is amusing to me. But this one was simultaneously a strong opinion on that, coupled with, oh, this is going to make a good 20 minutes of podcast, coupled with, can you believe this? This is, I've never seen anything like this in my life. It interferes with my ability to be immediately angry about it, because I find it so confusing.
Well, this particular article was posted on the InsideHigherEd.com website, and we'll post the link to the to it after the show and in the show notes. But this was a bit nuts. Do you want to walk us through the whole thing here, James?
Sure. So it's about a week ago. And I would say specifically, this was confined as a professor of philosophy somewhere. Now, don't be field racist. That's a real thing I made up. Having been yelled at by a sociologist the other day for doing the mildest joke that's ever come out of my head, which is very obviously good-natured. That's not funny. You do see how you're making my point for me. In my defense, it was an excellent joke.
Was it on Twitter?
Focus. Oh shit, it's out there somewhere. It doesn't matter. The point is simply that our professor of philosophy thinks that graduate students publishing has deleterious effects. There's too many, in his opinion, there's too many journal submissions, so it's changing the relationship that people have with the stuff they're putting out. It's leading to more formulaic papers. And it's making things untenable for people with real jobs who are competing with other people for space. Aww. That's my sympathy face. If you think, shit, it doesn't look very practiced or actually sympathetic, it's not very fucking sympathetic at all. It lacks sympathy in any realistic capacity. Go on in, Dan.
Yeah, look, I just didn't understand the argument of this bloke at all. I mean, on the one hand, you're saying, yeah, this is going to... There's too many papers being published, and let's stop grad students from doing it. Like, it's just doesn't make any doesn't make any sense at all. And this is a great example of just another way that these senior types are gatekeeping and trying to actually control what's being published, and using the positions of power to actually go, yep, we just we shouldn't be doing this. Grad students.
There is a guy in the Home Depot over at Watertown, or as Americans say, Depot, the Home Depot. There's a guy in the Home Depot who has a restricted, because there's so much stuff in the garden department, there's a restricted area into which you can or cannot go because you can't have children there. And he literally stands there next to the gate selling gates, and he's less of a gatekeeper than this motherfucker. So his job is keeping gates. Oh, I mean, this is... First of all, you put people in a position where you go, okay, I tell you what we'll do. I'll tell you how, we don't have any money. I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll get 1 million junior motherfuckers and we don't need to pay. And then we'll run the entire system on the back of those people. Okay, that's a great idea. What will we do next? Okay, we'll tell them that to differentiate themselves, they need to do as much as humanly possible. So they need to begin to externalize their idea and get on social media and talk to people and be special little fucking pedals. But God forbid they actually take everyone else's advice. And now the problem is there's too much stuff to assess. So we have to ban them from having opinions. I'll get angry about this more later. I want to know if that ever happened to you.
No, I've never been limited when it comes to actually publishing stuff. If anything, it's the opposite. It's you're not publishing enough, publish more things.
I mean, did you ever submit anything to a journal, something you do all the time, and you write your special little articles, and you send them to people? Has anyone ever said, you were a grad student, well, when you were a grad student, rather than a filthy old man like you are now? Did you ever get any of that?
Look, I don't think I've gotten that explicitly, but I've noticed something really, really interesting. In that I've got a few search alerts for my particular papers, and I've actually found that what I've done is I've sent a paper to Fancy Pants Journal, and I know where which city the editor is in, yeah, and then let's say, you know, within 10 hours of submitting the paper, all of a sudden I get a Google of me, obviously from that city. Now, the chances of that actually being the editor are quite high. And then quite often I actually get a rejection. I mean, maybe the paper sucked. But I mean, a lot of it could be
entirely possible.
It's entirely
meta-analysis. It's entirely possible he took one look at it and went, "What is this garden of rocks and weeds?"
But the thing is, we know that, you know, in an ideal world, papers should be examined on their own merits, not on who the researcher is.
Well, that's the whole point of blind review. It's the whole point of signed review. It's interfering with the relationship we have with assessing stuff. This is proposing an additional barrier, which is don't be a person from a place.
Yeah. And look, I so many times at conferences I've gotten that vibe where like, oh, where are you from? Oh, Europe, okay, and they're looking for the next person to talk to. So there is a lot of that bias going
Sorry,
on.
why? Do they don't share the same herring-based humor that I do? Is it more sort of like there's nothing useful you can do for me because you're not from where I wish to go
Yeah,
or where I'm
yeah,
from? All right,
absolutely,
okay.
absolutely.
If you've ever done that, you should go to the nearest window right now. You should raise the pane until it's at the exact height of your head, and then you should smash your forehead into the window until it breaks and you learn a valuable lesson.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyone who's look, this is why I'm a reasonably sociable person. You've probably observed this in a variety of contexts. I can't honestly say I'm shy, but I fucking loathe networking, quote unquote. I hate forced interaction. And I especially hate people who are so, hey, what's going on? How's the decent dollar? How are you? We're best friends now. Okay, all right. Finger hands, finger guns. That's all right. We got to go. I fucking hate that vibe. And I can't do it. I want to say something wildly horrible off the first, from the very first center of the interaction. And that just makes it a whole lot worse because that's the center of everything that's artificial about it.
I want to
stick gatekeeping on top of that, and then you go, hey, I'm looking for you. Can you help me? Oh no, you're junior. Oh no, you're European. Bless you. Fuck off.
junior European. That's the worst combo.
Junior European. It sounds like you've only got
bad.
It sounds like you've only got half of a pair of those bright blue chinos.
I want to suggest a counterpoint. I know that there's a few granting agencies who are offering grants for early career researchers, and they actually set limits to how many years since your PhD where you can actually apply. I know the local research council here in Norway has done something similar where you can't actually apply for their big early career researcher grant until you're 2 years PhD. And their argument was, well, we looked at the data over the past 10 years, and we found that it was minimal, like 1 or 2% of people who were actually within 2 years post PhD who were actually successful. So in order to actually reduce waste and reduce burden on the reviewers, we're just going to say, no, if you're within 2 years, see you later. So I mean, gatekeeping, maybe not, but in that context, it sort of makes sense.
Well, in that they're also trying to. I mean, they're giving them enough time. In their mind, they're giving you enough time to get established and making sure that the projects are not prospective.
Yeah. Now, I think
what I mean?
I think the big difference here is that you're not competing against everyone. So they're looking for people who are between 2 to 8 post PhD. Yeah.
Right.
So that pool, you're gonna get your chance eventually. But when it comes to this journal stuff, like you're always going to be competing against everyone. So I think it's a bit different there in that context.
Well, it is. Look, the vast majority of things that are awarded to people are designed to address a structural issue. So when you have big program grants to get people who are middle-aged to come back to their country of origin and restart, there's a purpose to that. If you've got early career awards that are based on whatever you've immediately done previously to that. So things that are for immediately post-PhD are things where you're doing a PhD. The ones that you're talking about are things that are allowed. You're like, oh, you started off with a good idea. You've got to develop a program of research, and now it's something we feel like we can buy into. So they're all focused like that. And if there's a scheme for people who are like 2 to 8 years post PhD, I'm almost certain that there's plenty for people who are there's jobs, especially for when you see it and it says you must have your PhD by. So all of these things are allowed to have barriers. It's a career progression thing. Throw a few extra things into the pot here because that might be fun. What if you've worked in industry for 15 years and you're a returning postgrad who's 40 and has more experience than the average junior PI? But what if you're me and you did a master's on something for 3.5 years that was really, really, really focused because you had nothing else to do? There's not one designation doth not a grad student make, or is it maketh? I don't know. The idea that you're at a certain career stage, so you only know a certain. I know people who are. What if you're an MD who's going back to who's doing your PhD over long periods of time? I mean, you could be a fucking registrar or something, writing about a clinical condition that you already treat. and you're collecting data to do research on it, and then they go, no, you can't publish. You're a grad student. I think a lot of the original proposal here is specific to philosophy. Did you know very big philosophy journals have rejection rates that are similar to, or even worse than, the super high tier scientific journals?
I did not know that, but
big philosophy journal acceptance rates are fucking low. They're really low. They're like somewhere between, I've seen figures between 5 and 8% for some of the top ones. I don't know how you judge whether or not something, I wonder if it has to be a good intellectual fit for the specific people that it's going to, because that is insane. Well, I wonder if the preprint thing's ever going to take off in philosophy, because I wonder how much stuff is being left on the cutting room floor.
Yeah, but I mean, at the same time, we sort of thought, 5 years ago that the preprints wouldn't really take off in psych because it wasn't really happening. But look at it now; it's going crazy. So you can kind of imagine this happening within philosophy, but it's, I don't know. If any people who are listening in philosophy, let us know. #Hertz50.
Yeah, and let us know why you're such sick, weird idiots. Cutting all that stuff out and hurting people's feelings. No, so speaking of which, question from the internet: what does mean by publishing just publishing papers? Yeah, sorry. Science, we have a tendency to conflate these things. Yeah, absolutely, just publishing papers. There's plenty of other stuff you can do. I know in some academic systems there's more of a focus on when are you going to write a book because you need it for your final matriculation or whatever. And some people write white papers, and some people have conference papers, etc., etc. But we exclusively mean papers because we come from a group of people with a very narrow mindset, and we're both particularly closed-minded, but especially Dan. This happened to me. This actually, I didn't get to the fun part of the story. This explicitly happened to me. I wrote a review paper by myself during my PhD, which we named this podcast after. And one of the reviews for that paper said, literally, author is a grad student, and this is potentially a problem. Or this is a difficult, the guy's English wasn't amazing, but he essentially said, you're a grad student. I wrote back, I took a chance on this one. I wrote back and said, I cannot answer to the criticism that I am a grad student. However, if you can find, I'll do you a deal. I'll withdraw the paper if you find any significant factual inaccuracy with anything that I've said.
You said that? You legit said that?
Yes.
Okay.
Wasn't wrong. There's the other thing, though, is, I mean, it's somewhat disingenuous of me because no reviewer is going to roll up his sleeves. All right, I'm going to find one and show this little fucker what he's made out of.
Nothing like beating down a grad student.
Yeah, there's nothing like that's going to happen. He doesn't care that much. It's a Frontiers paper. I mean, I feel really terrible when I see some of the stranger research. And so, I mean, Frontiers is a journal group. Now, my interactions with Frontiers in physiology have uniformly been excellent. I know the editor. I know the editor's work. I trust the editors. Most of the people who do the reviewing, I'm familiar enough with them. And then I see the Frontiers in psych things occasionally, and then it's like Frontiers in basket weaving and automotive management, and, because the journal group doesn't give a shit. So in this particular occasion, there was no further difficulty after that. I mean, you can't take that shit lying down. Especially, I spent fucking ages on this paper, and that doesn't entitle you to anything. But at some point in time, and you're right, especially when you're writing a review, all the things that are available to be reviewed.
Look, I think as well that that reviewer would not have had the same concern if you weren't sole authoring that paper. That paper was just you. So if old mate, read this and saw that you was, some other senior person, they probably wouldn't have said that. But it's just this idea. And look, this brings me to this. What's more common in the biomedical sciences is that a lot of journals actually specifically say if you're a grad student. These are more review-orientated journals, but they say that if you're a grad student, you cannot publish in this paper. Don't even bother submitting. The idea being,
oh, charming, right?
Yeah, the idea being that, like, how could a grad student possibly get the knowledge together to write a good review paper, which is ridiculous. I mean, maybe, yeah, sure, there's a lot of grad students writing shitty review papers, but there's a lot of senior people writing shitty review papers as well. So it's exactly
there's a lot of people cynically writing review papers because in many respects you have less resource. Maybe it's not easier, but you have less resources to coordinate. What you really need to be able to do is sit down and find the time to bang the shit out. So an awful lot of people do it in terms of, I can triangulate something no one ever said before. It may be of questionable use to everyone, but if I throw all this shit together with all that shit and then pretend I went and looked out for lots and lots and lots of it, I can write a paper and lots of people are going to tell me that I'm a clever pedal. And that's all. People do that with meta-analyses as well. And it's fucking cynical, and most of the stuff is garbage. No, it's sort of, I've summed up all the things that needed summing up. Well, they didn't need summing up in the first place because there's 3 good ones everyone's read, and there's 5 shit ones, and you stuck them together according to a criteria you removed from your own internal bodily cavity, and then now there's this shit, and there's something else to read. Thanks very much. It's exactly what everyone wanted. More things to read. Go fuck yourself.
Look, yeah, there is a lot of bad meta-analyses out there. Particularly because,
there are.
Yeah, particularly because there's a lot of easy to use software. And I actually said I tweeted a few weeks ago, going, this is the problem. We are getting bad meta-analyses because the software's so easy to use. And there's a guy, his name escapes me, who's actually developing a Jamovi plugin to do meta-analysis there. And he's like, oh no, what have I done? But look, this comes back to this whole idea of, like, the whole p-value argument. P-values aren't bad in themselves. It's how they're applied. And exactly the same thing with meta-analysis. Meta-analysis isn't bad, but you can apply it really poorly. And when you're actually using the software, because it doesn't break on you, kind of like it does in R, then you think you're doing something right. So that's a big difference there.
No, sorry, I was just emotionally overwhelmed by your impassioned defensive meta-analysis.
Look, every single time someone comes up with a criticism, I think there's a good counter to that. And this idea that these things can be incredibly biased, I think. But that's when the whole pre-registration of meta-analyses comes into play. And I'm not quite sure whether there's registered reports for meta-analysis. I think that would also be interesting as well.
Well, what happened to Consort? Don't you? Is there no facility to say how you're going to do a particularly long and involved analytical procedure before you actually start to do it? Is it not like a clinical trial?
Yeah,
in any respect.
Yeah, there is. There's a database called Prospero, which is run. That's the one. Yeah, Prospero. So you can actually register. But the problem with Prospero, not the problem, but it's very similar in regards to clinicaltrials.gov, where the amount of information that you have to give is quite minimal. Now, there's a big difference.
And clinicaltrials.gov is still perfectly capable of showing you when people are outcome switching and generally being dishonest fucks and doing bad clinical research.
But Prospero,
so I don't know, maybe that's enough.
But Prospero can do the same thing. But, when I first read about registered reports, I'm like, well, what does it do, particularly more for clinical research? What does it do that a pre-registered or a pre-registered trial doesn't do? And the more I read into it and the more arguments I've heard, I thought it's completely different. Because firstly, you're actually proposing something which is pre-reviewed when it comes to your analysis plans. And your actual analysis plans are much more explicit than we're going to look for a difference. It's going to go, we're going to look for a difference using these methods. So there's a world of difference. So if you'd actually do a registered report for meta-analysis, I think that'd be a big difference.
Okay, well, there's going to be some people who are PhD students now all over the world that I meet on the internet has so much more energy than me. Can someone who is young and not yet drinking rye whiskey in the middle of the night, watching old films and crying into a non-biodegradable pillow, can someone like that get the reg rep going for meta-analysis so I don't have to read more shite from Dan and his sticky brood of weird channeling freaks?
Why
why are we arguing it? But we're not even really arguing. But we'd certainly lost focus on graduate students allowed to publish.
Graduate students, you publish and you go nuts. And I think your approach of okay, find an error and then I'll admit that maybe I was too junior to do this. I think that should be a great approach.
Tell me it's wrong. Well, that's the other thing, of course. If you send it and then they go, this is a reasonably naive conception of the field, you need to consider papers X, Y, Z. The approach taken in A and B will completely inform sections 2 through 4. If you go back and redo all of that, then maybe we could argue that this is decent, but you didn't really need to write it in the first place. If you're going to get a response like that, then it's not a matter of you shouldn't have written it as much as, you've got more to learn before someone else determines that it's a useful way of organizing the material. I'm not going to pretend that's never happened to me. Holy shit! No.
we have a listener question over Twitter. It's Peder Isaged, and he's asked.
Wait, what?
Peder Isaged. He's a local Norwegian listener.
Fucking name. Oh, even a normally spelt name sounds cool in Norwegian.
Well, he's asked, when do issues with publishing as a grad student apply? When a solo author, first author, or anywhere in the author list? Look,
that's a fucking great point. I suppose what we're really talking about is anything that's driven by a graduate student. So obviously that applies to solo author, but I think the vast majority of publishing everywhere is something that's written by a junior person where everyone else manages to wet their beak over the time. So it's going to be like grad et al. Is probably 80 to 90% of a lot of research that grad students are doing. It is nice to be able to be included on other papers, but in my experience of the social and the life sciences, the vast majority of stuff you're doing is stuff you're driving yourself. At least it's stuff that actually matters. But if I don't think anyone's going to go through something that's written by and go, the third author is a graduate student and needs to get off the paper or get in the fucking sea, is never going to happen. We're talking about stuff that's grad driven. One of something I forgot to mention is I've seen people in a variety of contexts bitching about this. The fact that because any written thesis needs to contain an introduction, and any given thesis probably needs to be on a new topic rather than simply replicating awesome shit that someone else already did, perhaps, maybe. So if that's the case, you need to write a novel introduction on something, and a lot of people want to turn that into a review paper because it's the format that we have where you publish something and everyone reads it. I've seen an awful lot of people bitching about bad ones of those in a lot of different contexts, especially in the life sciences, actually. Like XYZ wrote a review paper about this. And it's always been bitched about from the perspective of they don't have a sufficient command of the material to write a good paper, and never from like, you're young, fuck off. It's not from, I mean, it's something that causes the problem. We're talking about the problem. It's a causative factor. I mean, if you wrote a really good one, no one would even look it up.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you look up the status of the people who are writing papers that you review?
Never.
I can't honestly say I've done that. Maybe if it's like a work group that I know, I recognize, say there's 4 authors and I recognize 2 of them and they're from a place and there's a new name.
You'd assume they're more junior.
You would, but sometimes I'm super curious because I want to meet the person. Is like I want to know what their work is. I want to talk to them. But I think I've seen so many heterogeneous PhD students over such a long period of time. I just don't assume that they don't know what they're talking about. I've met mature age, younger than me, but just like too intelligent to exist. People who have an amazing command of stuff 6 months after they start. There's weird people who just exist for what they do. So the flip side of that is I've met many professors who, in a justifiable world, would be forced to walk over a sharpened sharpened road grating through a storm drain wearing a lead hat until they were shredded like Vietnamese beef. So I mean, a lot of these people, I wouldn't let them write directions to the shops on the back of a matchbox.
Well, with that,
You can't accuse me of losing focus.
No focus there. Before we move on to our next session, our next topic. Sorry. Yeah, thanks for participating online. If you're listening live, use the Hertz 50 hashtag. People have been doing that to ask questions. And also,
it's good, because I mean, we have a tendency to ignore all details and not be comprehensive, because that's more fun, frankly.
And I've already been corrected. The episode's only been going for 20 minutes, and I've already got a correction. Daniel Larkins, former guest, is watching and has chimed in, and the person I was talking about that had created the meta-analysis module.
Oh yeah, look, you were wrong.
No, I wasn't wrong. I just forgot the name, but it's Kyle Hamilton who did it, and I think he's doing fantastic work actually bringing meta-analysis into Jamovi. And look, I think Jamovi's great in the fact that you can actually make these modules. Daniel's made the Toaster module to do his 2 one-sided tests for equivalence testing. And that's been great. But speaking of Daniel, it's our 50th episode, and I just want to give a quick thanks to all our guests that have come on the show so far. We've had Jason Hoyt, Anne Scheel, Andy Field, Nick Brown. We've had Michelle Neughton, Daniel Larkins, what I just said, and Robin Koch, who was our first guest. Is that everyone from memory?
I think so.
Yes. Sorry if we missed any.
Dan, yeah, it's really hard when I'm not prepared for this. You just laundry listed 9 people at me, all of whom I'm reasonably well familiar with on a sort of a day-to-day level. So have I forgotten anyone? I don't know. Go back and read the list.
I hope we have.
Why are you asking me?
I don't know. Maybe you'll remember. But yeah, thanks to our guests that have.
I forgot to wear socks the other day with formal shoes. Maybe I'll remember. Jesus, get on with it.
If and listeners, if you do have any suggestions for any future guests, send them in as well. We're always looking for ideas of who to get into the show. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about is a what was that? He's giving me face. Now you can see. Now you can see. Now you can see the evidence.
I did that without even thinking.
Okay, let's bring this back. We I saw an interesting tweet come up a few days ago, which has been retweeted a ton of times, which was done by Elko Fried, who's at Elko.
Now.
Yeah.
I thought this dude's name was Elko for ages, and I thought it was awesome.
Iko.
Like that's it. That's exactly right. I didn't know that was a name either, but I thought it would be like Elko, like Muso or bloody Wolfo. I thought it was kind of pastoral and interesting, and then I find out it's Iko or Aiko, which is even more confusing, frankly. And I noticed something interesting. He's the only person I've ever seen whose surname is a noun, a verb, and an adjective.
There you go. I'm sure he knows that. Maybe he doesn't. I don't know.
I don't know. Why do I notice things like this? It's the same reason that I start trying to see if there's natural square roots of numbers in when the cars drive past.
Well,
that's a weird habit. Anyway, sorry, you were saying.
So Iko has he put a post out where he's compiled a list of things people regularly expect me as a postdoc to know, working between both clinical, psych, and methods. All right, so
read it out. There is fast as well.
There's 24 things: a good understanding of basic statistics, a good understanding of elaborate models like basic SEM, network models, frequentist and Bayesian, at least a basic idea of Bayesian statistics, picking up cool new things such as machine learning and neural networks, knowing R well. and knowing JASP well enough to teach students, substantial knowledge in my fields, at least a minimal background in the philosophy of science, keeping up with stats developments, knowing at least one proper programming language like Python, running a blog to get visibility in order to have a chance to get tenure, embracing and supporting open science practices, engaging in debates on social media, marketing your research on ResearchGate, academia, PsychArchive, writing tons of papers, being an editor for 1 or 2 journals to increase chances for tenure, reviewing about 5 papers a month, teaching, supervising, writing up to 4 grant applications, applying for positions, traveling a lot, standing out as a calm, collected member of the university, and number 24, math. Those are the 24 things. Now, James, your thoughts?
I can do a bit of 20 and 15 and a 2.
Yeah.
No.
like basic SEM. I've never seen you do that.
Yeah, there's no reason. I don't need to deploy these things, so I become familiar with them when I need to. That is obviously a highly idealized list, and it is also from a specific place where all of those things are important. You could take someone who works in the physical sciences or the biological sciences who could do almost none of all that other stuff, but at the same time do insanely sophisticated work, know a great deal, write particularly important papers, etc., 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 and they could be phenomenally successful. So this goes into a very specific academic tradition within the social sciences. It's also like wildly unrealistic, because what you're saying is, at the same time, is like, first of all, I'm a reasonably nice human being. I mean, you're doing a lot of teaching, you're doing a lot of service, and let's get this out of the way. No fucking person, no postdoc is reviewing 5 papers a month. Really? You're reviewing 60 papers a year?
Nah. I'm sure there's
right?
I'm sure there's on
and you're an editor? You're an editor?
Two journals.
No. I wouldn't. No, sorry. Look, if this is a series of expectations that have all been compiled from sort of different sources about what you maybe or maybe not do or don't. Yeah, cool. I think an awful lot of PIs would. I said this on the internet the other day. I think an awful lot of PIs would settle for just 20 if you could get them funded.
Yeah.
Right, 3 or 4 major grant applications a year. How about, here's a good thing for a postdoc. Scratch your ass whenever you want to and get 1 big grant funded a year.
That's all you need to do.
Now, put it this way. Would a lot of PIs take that postdoc?
For sure.
If that was absolutely guaranteed. You're goddamn right they would. Yeah, absolutely. So, look, would other stuff hang off in the balance? All these things that you're supposed to do. So the point of this is probably not here is a guide to success. I'm fairly sure that the point is we are told that all of these things should be valuable. And in some context, according to someone, this has been considered to be an idealized outcome. It's something that needs to happen. And if you stick it all together, the expectation is insane. And this is an excellent topic because someone the other day was saying, why can't psychologists understand mathematics properly?
I saw that argument. Was that in the context of someone was talking about how
they're psychologists? I've met an awful lot of pure mathematicians. I could tell you what they know about psychology.
I think was that in the context of I saw someone who was writing a paper and they had the temerity to add an equation in the paper, and the editor was like, you have to turn it back a bit. you can't
an equation.
An equation. You have to
chill out, mate.
You have to take this out, and I'm not sure what ended up happening there.
A bloody sigma? We don't sigma here, chief.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Yeah, you have to,
sigma.
You have to write out alpha rather than actually using the alpha signal, a symbol.
It's much less scary.
Much less scary than doing that.
Yeah, that's just goofy. Nick told this story. Nick Brown. What's his thing? It's Steam Train on Twitter. I don't know how the fuck to spell it. He told this story. This is a good example of psych sort of numbers fear. When we published the Grimm test, after all the work was done and it's all stuck together and we had an explanation of it, we were so struck by how simple what we'd done was that we honestly thought there was a realistic chance of someone going, this is mathematically naive. This isn't interesting because it's so mind-numbingly simple. Because we'd never claimed that we were engaging with the Riemann hypothesis. It was a very simple observation designed to do a specific task that had a specific use. But we thought we were going to get lit up for doing something that was way too simple for words. Instead, they wrote back and said, would you consider redacting that thing where you go, the thing has the relationship to n times d to the power fucking something else? Because I don't know I think that needs more explanation. There's no more explanation to give. We're managing to get it down to 2 or 3 symbols. So there's a matter of, if there's a matter of editors telling people redact your mathematics in the social sciences, we don't want to know. I think part of that is them just simply thinking about their audience. I don't think they have a normative expectation that people wouldn't understand it necessarily, but more the fact that your job as an editor is to try to make things. If you've ever written anything for money and dealt with editors, they have a very different perspective to you. You have to write things and say some shit. They have to sell it. So that is part of the basket of tasks that comes with making shit as accessible as possible. You know, this isn't a journal of insane upside down underwater combinatorics. It's a journal of psychological whatever. They're just playing to their crowd.
Well, bringing it back to Iko's tweet. Look, I think all those things would definitely be an expectation, but I'm not quite sure, you know, whether there would be any. I'm not seeing many job applications which actually highlight a lot of these things.
There's no chance whatsoever that a job application could highlight even half of it.
Yeah.
Especially considering that a lot of it is an implied type. No job application gives a shit how many papers you review. That's why there's a small but growing perspective of fuck peer review. I don't think I want to do it no more. You know,
how many are you reviewing these days?
I have 3. I have 3 overdue. I've done 2 within the last week, and I have a request for what will be a 4th pending. So that many.
Yeah.
But I guess it's a busy time for submission and assessment. But all of these things they come from a variety of areas. They're all sent to me because they want the biosignals scrutinized heavily with a blackjack and a set of brass knuckles. They want to know whether or not these people have shit the bed. So they're from 4 completely different intellectual traditions. I actually changed my Publons profile photo to one of me wearing a tiara in a kitchen at my birthday party, because I thought that if I looked more unusual, that and I'm not sober. I thought if I looked usual, I would be less likely to get review requests, and then I wouldn't have to fulfill the ICO criteria.
Maybe they're using that
people would take it easy on me. So I'm going to put it on the hashtag link. I can't say I'm particularly proud of this. I look bloated and sweaty, and I'm wearing a tiara because that is how I roll.
Maybe
and
they're using
it has done the opposite. I probably should have cropped the photo so the tiara was more visible. What can you do, man?
What can you do?
Every time you turn around, someone's trying to do something useful.
Maybe I saw that this website that I've never come across before called Jane, I think. I don't know the name of the full website.
I sent it to you.
You sent it to me, and it was amazing.
Yeah, you're giving away a closely held secret of
editors,
people who publish a great deal and have to handle a great deal of publications. Yeah.
This website's fantastic. You basically type in your journal, your paper keywords or your paper title, and it'll find you the most appropriate journal or the most appropriate venue for your work. And on the flip side, you can also search for for specific authors. So if you're an editor and you get a paper title or keywords, and then it'll pop up all like a list of the editors and how relevant they are to what you're doing, and then you can then you can fire away. Yeah, I think it's amazing. It's I don't know why I haven't heard of it before, but it's great.
Okay. Yeah, well, it's you're losing focus again, and it shouldn't always be me. I want to test you on the dirty 2 dozen.
hit me up.
Ending of basic statistics.
Getting there. better than I was.
Do I give you a half point or something?
Yeah. Let's go yes. Let's go yes with basics.
Okay, we'll give you. All right, I'll give you a point for that. Just say yes or no. Okay. Good understanding of elaborate models. SEM, fancy SEM, IRT. No.
No.
Network models, frequentist and Bayesian.
No.
No. At least a basic idea of Bayesian statistics.
Basic, yes.
Okay. Picking up machine learning neural nets quickly.
Nope.
Not at all. Knowing R well. Using M+ for things R can't do.
No.
Okay. Substantial knowledge in my fields.
I'd like to think so, but
I will go out on a limb and give you that one. Having as the minimal background in philosophy of science.
No.
Keeping up with stats development.
Yep.
Okay. Knowing at least one proper programming language.
No.
Run a blog, visibility in order to get chance to get tenure. I think you do enough.
Yeah.
I think you do enough. But the next one's embrace and support open science practices. So I'll give you that one too. Engage in debates on social media. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong. Yep, you can have that one. Market your research. You do a lot of that, you whore. Write tons of papers. Collaborate. Set up projects. Yeah, you do that. 2 journals? No, you don't. Review 5 papers a month?
Yeah. Slow down.
What?
I'm associate for 2.
That doesn't count.
Okay.
All right, it counts. Fine. Okay, review 5 papers a month. No. Teaching? No. Supervise students? Yes. Write 3 to 4 major grant applications a year?
No.
Apply for positions? You're not really applying for anything right now. I think you like it where you are because it's awesome, bastard. Travel a lot, organize, give talks at conferences, move every 2 years to another country. You might get a half point on that.
Yeah.
Okay, stand out as a calm, collected member of the university, be helpful and unstressed, have an open ear for students, problems, or workers. Absolutely not. I'll give you about -4 for that. -4. So, 11.
Wow, I failed.
Yeah. Now, obviously, this is specific to, like I said, this is specific to a research area within a tradition of social science, something. But even so, that is a lot of. You can see sometimes when you see a list like this, so the kind of the bracket creep within expectations of what you're supposed to do, because you are perpetually expected to compare yourself to people who are lucky or fortunate. Now, I know people who are lucky or fortunate, and the only problem I have with it is when they don't recognize that they're lucky or fortunate. I know people who got fantastic mentors who have shoehorned them through all sorts of shit that they needed, various sorts of problems, made sure they got money, made sure they continue to get money, introduced them to the right people, rolled them into projects where they could make an actual kind of difference, kept them afloat, listened when they had problems, essentially dragged them through by the year. Very good strategy from a purely selfish perspective for the simple reason that eventually they end up being your colleagues and you end up working together, you know? So I often wonder why the whole sort of burn it to the ground hyper-competitive aspect of all this bullshit is obviously less productive than the collegial one. But whatever. You don't know when you start any degree whether or not that's going to happen to you. You don't know what you're going to find. You have no control over the direction that the research happens in the laboratory that you work in. And if any of this stuff goes right, if you're in a lab and then suddenly they go, oh, we're going to work on this different candidate gene. Holy shit, it actually starts to work. Or you just happen to work with exomes or something, and the whole area starts to heat up. Particularly fancy or interesting, but you sort of read the tea leaves, but you also sort of got lucky. And somehow the relationship between how we interface with scientific questions and what's available to being asked suddenly means that you're in the fucking hot seat. And what you're interested in becomes really interesting to lots of other people because you have the right interface to answer or ask questions with. Now, all of this shit happens all the time at a kind of a meta level. And the people who get caught up in the right pieces of it, who end up getting Nature papers because they had to be in the right place, or because some result worked really well, or because their boss got a structural grant for $5 million and they had 3 years to work on a project, and so on and so on and so on. There's an awful lot of stuff where everything goes really well, you can't control that shit. Now, if you're trying to pull yourself up by your bootstraps to the place where you're competing with people who were well taken care of, where everything went right, I don't know what your fucking systolic is going to be when you're done trying to do all that. There's an awful lot of places where people's expectations for themselves can be wildly out of proportion with what can be done. Or really what should be done. You can't go back and change. You can't go back and go, oh, I really wish I'd spent the last 10 years getting a deeper background on XYZ because I really need it now. Well, you didn't know that 10 years ago. For fuck's sake, it was 10 years ago. You know? What are you supposed to do? You can't go back and do it over to make sure you're in a better position now.
Look, a lot of this stuff is just. Yeah, I mean, a lot of this stuff is just blind luck. I advertised a PhD position a few months ago and had a number of, at least 10 people that would have been perfect for the position. Yet one of them just... It's
a lot of people.
Yeah, a lot of people. Yet one of them just happened to have the right combination and stuff for my particular project. Now, there's no way that that they could have envisaged.
You could have planned for that, right?
And this person just happened to do all these things and happened to be the best fit. Now, these other 10 people would have done a good job, but this person happened to be a better fit. So there's so many things you can potentially do, but then it's just a flip of the coin. The position comes up and it's like, gee, this fits me perfectly. And there's just nothing much you can do.
Yep. Yeah, so but also for them as well, they've got a background that allows them to have a good interface with the problem that you're offering for them to work on. So if that not occurred and you had to get someone else, and maybe they'd have less of a possibility to, maybe you'd have less of a possibility to engage with the task itself, or maybe they want to pull it in a different direction. Yeah, it's really hard to get around the uncontrollable nature of a lot of that. And I think this sort of academic keeping up with the Joneses list of shit, all of which is realistic to some degree for some people, is, and I've seen things like it before. Like, oh, you always see the Inside Higher Ed or the Chronicle or something like that, and you go, why isn't everyone in X position doing Y? Oh, you're leaving money on the table, you filthy little poor people. It's sort of there's a series of competing expectations, and they continue to get added to as we get more outlets for publication and more tools and more analytical frameworks and more papers and more areas and more shit. And at some point in time, you just have to watch old episodes of Lost in your underpants.
And just ban grad students from publishing, and then it'll all be fixed.
Yeah, that'd be really straightforward. Look, I think an awful lot of people, an awful lot of PIs especially, would settle for just 15 and maybe a few grants. You know, just make a research record. Don't necessarily know everything. If you're going to have a focus on something, I know it's all hypothetical, but some people I know people who've done very well by just writing whatever's available to be written at any given point in time. It doesn't make the work good. It just means that there's a lot of it. This is the problem. You got fewer resources and more metrics. You end up with this fucking game playing.
Yeah. Even if you change rules, people will just at the moment the game is published as much as possible, and doesn't matter really as much with the quality. And what you're getting is just these bloated journals and people publishing crap. But
if that's the state of affairs, grad students should definitely not participate because it's technically their fault. So they're the ones who should be technically removed from this kind of rush to establish a profile, I suppose. Yeah, because it's their fault. Young people. These are millennial scientists are ruining.
Yeah.
Did you see the list recently of all the stuff that millennials are ruining?
What are they ruining now?
The other day they were ruining Hooters, and that was funny as shit. Millennials are ruining Hooters, and all anyone can think of is, what do you really feel like today, James? I need casual sexism, plastic, and chicken wings. Well, have I got the fucking casual restaurant dining option for you? And come on, it's not 1970. Just die already, Hooters. If you're listening, I'm pretty sure that corporate Hooters management is listening to it. It's essentially a methodological science podcast. But if you are listening, please go out of business. Please make your parent company cry. And then send everyone who works there to grad school, because apparently there's no problem with that.
Not at all.
Shit. That was good. This was I think this as a piece of stimulus material. As a piece of this is obviously written with some kind of satirical intent. This is like so these expectations are perfectly reasonable. But as a piece of stimulus material, it's like if there's a response that comes at the end of that, it might be if you don't know any maths, the response might be please just tone it the fuck down, will you? Please, we're doing our best out here.
Well, we're gonna move on to our next section, but we've had some more response online. I've had people now really promoting your way of actually changing your profile pic to something like what you've been doing on Publons to stop people from inviting you to review papers. So maybe you're actually going to start a new trend.
Yeah, so you look like a sweaty, unreliable psychopath, and maybe people won't look at your research record, and we'll just go based on your scone.
Well, keep sending in your comments over Twitter using the Hertz 50 hashtag. And if you want to give, it is our 50th birthday, and if you want to give us a little present, you can do a few things. You can write us a review on iTunes. We add to the stuff that we have there. If you don't even use iTunes, then you can write stuff on Twitter, on Facebook. Just add links to the show, add links to your favorite episodes, and tell your friends why you actually like the show. That'll warm James's heart if he sees those things online. So get amongst it and write about that stuff.
Yeah, warm my heart. Still summer here, man. It still feels like summer. It's Alston Christmas today. People who are not from Boston will not be familiar with Alston Christmas. 3/4 of the suburb moves on the same day because of the way the leases are organized. So awful lot of students moving in, an awful lot of students moving out. From my window here, I can see 3 separate moving trucks, and I can only see one small block of a street going that way and about 20 meters going that way. So it's called Alston Christmas because all the stuff that people are, I can't take my table back to Indiana. They just leave it on the pavement. All the stuff is rubbish, and it's usually all kicked to death. And there's also, of course, lots of rubbish. So the suburb basically explodes for the day, and it's way better being inside than it's way better being inside than anywhere else. Also, the weather's been disgusting recently. I'd trade it for some Norways right now.
Yeah, pretty nice here. Getting a bit cool though, but it's not too shabby. Well, for our next section, we're going to talk about something. I'm kind of surprised we haven't spoken about this before. Maybe it's come up in
Oh,
past
I'm not,
episodes.
because I've had absolutely no sort of I've committed to making no written contribution to this.
We
Because I'm desperately bored of it as a reflective topic to write about. But
we
this on the other hand, especially considering it's the big 5-0. The big 5-0. We're gonna do it.
it is time
What are we
to
doing?
it is time to talk about tone. The old tone debate.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you
Okay,
want to give
so
us a quick background for people that aren't familiar with what's been happening with the old tone?
yeah, yeah. Okay, so all right. So the modern standard 140 hertz, right? That's an A, and there's this whole conspiracy theory about tuning A to 432 hertz because it's allegedly better for you. And some of the background of this is insane. Goebbels is involved. It's like that we're deliberately avoiding tuning the modern A to 432 because it was too relaxing, and people are actually mad enough to think that this is something, was a deliberate decision made to unsettle people at some point in time, and it goes all the way back to sort of the 17th and 18th centuries over but Bach did this, or Stravinsky did that, and is this funny yet?
It's like, when's he going to bring it back? When is he going to bring it back?
I'm just watching you get more and more confused.
I was just so confused. I was waiting for the big switch, the big reveal, the big like, oh.
I'm sorry, I just can't take it seriously. Oh, I've gone the color of your shirt. I'm on a chair. I can't laugh much because I'm on an upright chair to get the thing in, which makes it very difficult to laugh properly. And I find that if it happens, I end up occluding my chest, and then normally I convulse laughing because obviously looking at your head is very funny.
Now, what's been happening with the tone debate?
I don't know specifically what's been happening. This is an ongoing. It's an ongoing discussion between not even really defined groups of people, but basically there is a tension between traditional academic discourse, which is very formal and measured, and words have a kind of a socially agreed upon center that allows us to say things proportionally, especially when we're dishing out criticism. There's a no, you can't just write, if someone sends you a terrible paper to review, you can't just write lol no, as much as you might be tempted. And two things happen that mean this is now continuously discussed. First of all, we make the move from written media and the format of he said, she said, but it takes 6 weeks to get a fucking response to anything, where people are communicating in a formal written format. Even if they're talking about should something be published or not, it takes a while. It's a formal communication where you're writing a set piece of something or something else. That's switching to a conversation. And the conversation is occurring on the internet, and it's occurring more or less straight away. And to add to that, we have fractious discussions to have about whether or not science is fucked. So there are people who are defenders of a status quo that everyone feels is totally unsustainable, that has made a series of very poor structural decisions about how we do work in order to establish propositional knowledge. And arguments about something like that go really deep. People end up with personal identifications that are related to what they do with their lives. They feel like they're intimately connected to the act of discovering meaning in the first place. And then, of course, you have people who think everything's just fucking fine. Thanks very much. Everything in science is amazing because they've obviously done well at it. So that means that it's fair and just because they're fantastic people. I have very, very little sympathy for that point in time if the sarcasm wasn't obvious. So what we end up now is with a continuous discussion about how criticism and discourse should take place. And whether or not the language used is appropriate or whether it's being unnecessarily rude or flippant or exclusionary or difficult or if it smells like fish on a hot day or fucking whatever else. How is that?
Yeah, I think that's a really good summary. And it is really the old school versus the new school, and this this idea that if there's anything wrong in science, the best way to address it is going the old school route and actually writing a letter to the editor, which we had some pretty good experience ourselves doing that. But you just hear stories, but you've also had experience yourself of getting knockbacks or. Did your letter actually? There was one that you were writing a while ago. Did it actually end up getting published, or what was
Which one?
I think it was on.
To be a lot more specific.
Yeah, that was the one on vagal tone. Or have you written
Narrow
a few?
It down, Jan.
Have you written a few papers in vagal tone? Yeah,
because people getting cardiovascular physiology wrong in social science papers is something I've never noticed before.
Never happens.
No, it's extremely uncommon. Fuck. Are you talking about the one that went to Psych Science?
Yeah,
that was a year or two ago. That wasn't a letter. That was a whole paper discussing how another paper wasn't any good.
And that was a pretty drawn out process for you, wasn't it?
Oh shit, yeah. But look, something like that always is. You can't confuse the ability, like publishing direct criticism in a journal is that to a lot of people violates the social contract of don't fucking argue with me publicly because it makes me look bad. Now that is a ridiculous social contract, but a lot of people very obviously implicitly believe it. You can have dueling papers where you argue about stuff. You know, I have a different theory, but this is generative. Like I write a paper about my theory, you write a paper about your theory, and we have sort of this like friendly enemies sort of thing going on where we have dueling bodies of evidence. But when someone does a shit paper and you write to the journal to go, that's a shit paper, people treat that completely differently to I'm proposing an alternate body of knowledge. I'm proposing alternate observations rather than your observations are a sack of fuck. Now the second is obviously a lot faster, but it's also obviously a lot more absolute. It's very difficult to establish experimental observations the vast majority of the time, but it's very easy to tell when someone's done something that's methodologically ridiculous. A lot of the time, it's reasonably easy to pry that out, and it's fairly quick. Hearing that, and journals are reticent to publish it a lot of the time because it's fractious. You obviously get into the immediate competing argument of should science be fractious. Obviously, I'm very much on the side of yes. Can't hardly tell why. Into this environment, we have a broader conversation. Now, I see a lot of these discussions, and I wonder how many of them are influenced by the format that people are talking in. It almost always happens when I almost need to start talking about the role of humor and what something supposedly trying to be funny actually is. But I think that would make a desperately boring podcast. So I'll confine myself to the following observation, and here it is. A lot of you would make shit politicians, and if you don't figure out your interface with something like this, this is going to be some Ouroboros shit right here, and the snake will end up consuming itself. This is not something to spend. I mean, I can't throw my hands open and go, well, everyone should treat everyone else nicely, and we end up with a fucking disagreement about what nice is. What I'm saying is that there is a focus now where everyone wants Everyone wants whatever's in front of them to be curated exactly the way they feel it should be. They think that other people's boundaries should be their boundaries. They think that the appropriate limits of language are at a certain level, depending on the topic and what they're actually talking about. And how they see things being funny changes wildly between people. And a lot of the time, they're not content to agree with other people on the basis of, I think some process-based shit should be done like this. Well, I think some process shit should be done in exactly the same way. We have an agreement. Most of these things, science is trying to start within itself right now a broad social movement about how to change the way that observations are structured, how they work from the guts out. This is open data and registered reports and new journal formats. I saw something about a month ago. There's a whole thing. It's on GitHub. You can start your own journal using open source.
I saw this
software. We could literally make the journal of James the Arsehole and Dan the fucking herring muncher, and it could be established in probably a few days. Obviously, we won't do that because we're not insane. The last thing we need is more work. But this collective environment is designed to change a great deal of shit. Yeah. And there's a lot of resistance from a lot of different formats. It's seen differently by a lot of different fields. And something people continually overlook is this is going to be huge. Whatever you end up with is going to be one seriously uneasy coalition. You've got some central things that you agree on. And I have a tendency, I got to admit this, I have a tendency whenever this starts happening in the first instance, I switch the fuck off. And I think for most people, especially most people who grew up in a place where Australian humor, especially when I grew up, is really not known for its sensitivity.
No.
So my boundaries.
It's written in that constitution. You can call politicians whatever you want.
Oh, you can say it, Dan. You can say it because it's legal in Australia now. It's
legal. Yeah, look, and that's the thing.
No one knows what you're referring to, and you're too polite to say it.
Well,
a legal case in Australia the other day. Is this what you're referring to? What I'm
referring to the High Court legal case.
Are you allowed to? Are you allowed to read out a headline if I find you a...
Look, I'll cut you off there. So basically...
It's not fun me saying it.
There was a there was a bloke. There was basically a hard court case, and this is he a political activist? Who is this bloke?
He's a mad guy with a sign who walks around.
Yeah, he walks around with a sign saying that one of our ex-prime ministers, who still is a minister for some reason, is the C word.
Is he in a cabinet?
He's just a backbencher, as far as I know. And
okay.
Anyway, so now it's according to the High Court, you can call politicians whatever you want, and you're protected by the Constitution of Australia. So all that to say, both of us are quite thick-skinned. I remember once I got some pretty harsh public criticism, and people were like, "Oh, you all right? That was crazy." And I'm like, "That's nothing compared to the sort of stuff that we would get normally." So yeah.
What do you mean we'd get normally? I mean, you had to actually work in the same physical location as me, and people wonder why you're able to put up with...
People ask me all the time. That's their first question, James.
No lies. This is on the public record. Wow, I'm sorry about the siren. You can probably hear the hell out of that. Yeah, people are moving in for the first day, and they're setting off their fire alarms because they're 19-year-old fucking idiots. And, what does this do? I'll poke it with burning cigarette. Oh, it went beep. So the shit is blowing up out there.
Let's bring it back to tone. Now, I'm thinking, is a lot of this just the fact that people are now starting to subvert the traditional journal process? Not necessarily how things are said, but the fact that things are being said in the first place. So quite typically, someone would say something in a journal, someone would write a letter, you'd have an argument, and then hopefully you'd find some resolution in the end. But almost always the original author gets the last word. Whereas now you have a situation where you have people that can actually post comments directly. They can post blogs, and you almost get the feeling that people aren't really disagreeing with the tone or with what's being said, but the fact that people can actually go around this and things can be criticized. I saw a lot of people about a week ago. Neuroskeptic was doing some screenshots of some pretty gnarly comments on I think it was PubMed Commons, where people were posting anonymously, and the offense that the author of the fact that someone was actually posting someone anonymously, they were like, I can't take anything you're saying seriously. Like, they're basically like reveal yourself or identify yourself. This is crazy. You can't criticize my paper. Like, your opinion's mean nothing because you're anonymous. And they were
like a reviewer.
Yeah, I know. I know.
What were the actual? What was the substance of the criticism? So it's all entirely irrelevant. Like, what was in them?
The criticism seemed legit. It was basically, I think it was speaking of Frontiers, I think it was a Frontiers paper where they were looking at potential treatments for some respiratory diseases from living in a moldy house. And apparently this
treating that. You can get respiratory problems from living in a moldy house.
Yeah, but it was treatments for this. And look, the criticisms were basically saying that you had no control whatsoever. And you had like an N of 4, so you should really tone down your claims. And this is written anonymously, and the author took great umbrage at the fact that they were anonymous. We'll post a picture to it. We'll find it. And then the editor of the person who actually edited the paper also jumped in, defending the author as well, going, yes, identify yourself if you're going to make these criticisms. Yeah, so it's that's almost the situation these days, where if something sort of happens outside this traditional form of doing this, now the fact that it was a Frontiers paper meant that if this person actually wanted to publish a criticism, they would have to pony up the money to do it. Whereas now you have these opportunities and these ways. And this has happened a lot of times where there are other journals that are open access, which is fantastic. Someone writes something which is wrong or a bit over the mark, and people are like, they're writing blog posts going specifically, I wanted to write a response, but it would have cost me $1,000 to write an A4 piece of paper. So this is my blog. And then the author comes back going, they wrote a blog. It's a blog, so it can't be taken seriously. Look at what they said. Look at the criticisms. And so you have this whole argument. And look, blogs are fantastic if you want to actually work through these papers. And I know a lot of people now are actually with their journal clubs. They're actually writing down stuff that was said during the journal clubs and posting the minutes from their journal clubs on PubMed Commons as a way of actually looking through papers, and that's a fantastic approach.
Yeah, that is. I like a good online journal club.
Look,
I think maybe there's more than maybe there's. But I think the discussion of how this shit should happen, it changes a lot between formats as well. And you're talking specifically about how to handle the exact interface between this is a journal article and this is not. But the debate goes more broadly into people talking shit about science on the internet.
But do you really think it's a humor thing?
Well, if people are trying to be funny, then yeah, it can be. It's I'm not sure how to fully articulate it, but the problem is because I've convinced myself that it's a terrible idea to start writing about it. I'm gonna do that. No one will fucking read it. It's all I can. I've just persistently struck by. I don't want everyone to get along. That would be seriously dangerous.
We wouldn't get anywhere.
I would like people to be aware at all times that there is a reason that they're arguing in the first place, and a lot of the time the reason is not something that you should put aside in service of talking about how that discussion should be structured.
Yeah.
I'd say don't tell people not to be a dick, or there's no point having a discussion about language. But when you have one and it's fucking bigger than the original thing that it was talking about, you very obviously have a mismatch between focus and application.
With,
and I think there's an awful lot of people like me who are aware of all this stuff and who've seen it, and at some point in time, it's also been collectively, if you want to alienate the fuck out of people, bore them. That's it. It's very easy to get people to pay no attention whatsoever to what's going on. And you think about this collectively. Now, it's not contradict them. It's not crawl right up their ass. It's bore the shit out of people.
I think a lot of people just
maybe there's nothing people can do with that on an individual level. But when you think about it, how it all fits together, yeah. Why does anyone stop engaging with something with a set of ideas? It's because suddenly they're not excited about it anymore. A lot of the time that doesn't really happen. I mean, I know people who are super excited about gardening, who've got gardening t-shirts and gardening stickers on their car. The ideas can be hella persistent if something has emotional resonance with people. The easiest way to make them stop is to bore them. I don't know if I've got any more thoughts past that. I might just put my hat on and sit here and wait for someone to take great umbrage with what I've said.
As you put your incredible hat on, we have another correction to make. Thanks to Daniel Larkins, who is Larkins on Twitter. He's tweeted in to say that writing a commentary in Frontiers is actually free. So I didn't realize that. So there you go. If someone has written something in Frontiers and you would like to do a commentary, it is free to do that. Did you know that, James? Yeah.
No. I think that may well have changed at some point in time.
No, it seems to be happening. Yeah,
no, I think at one stage that they used to, like, you couldn't take a piss near a Frontiers journal without them wanting 800 euros.
Now it's
is that a change in policy? This hat is extremely uncomfortable.
Yeah, it must be, because I've literally, I think a few years ago, someone told me this exact story, that they wanted to write something, they just couldn't afford it. But yeah, now it seems to have changed. So good on you Frontiers for changing that.
Yeah, that helps. Or you've got something you can't say very often. Good on you, Frontiers. As much as what the hell are you people doing?
But yeah,
the benefits of getting to a marketplace first, huh? Holy shit.
Yeah, but I think a lot of this just comes to the initial shock that someone has said something about your paper and it's public. That is what gets a lot of people. And just like this example that we're speaking of with the anonymous commenter, it just seemed that the fact that they actually wrote something about their paper, they were instantly on the defensive. And that's not a good look. And I think
it's not.
One thing that you always notice, and one thing that I tell the younger students when they're presenting, is that if someone criticizes your work publicly in a presentation, like don't go on the defensive, even if you're right and they're in the wrong. It's of course you want to correct if something wrong has been said. But once you start actually acting on the defensive, regardless, it's not a good look.
Yeah, good people. I used to be flummoxed that people I knew who were good researchers could be involved in shit research, and then you see when you do more science over time, and you start getting rolled into projects where you have no control, or you have a sort of a vague association, etc. But you end up being on the paper anyway, and you can't say, redact me from the work I did because I didn't like how you designed it 18 months ago before I met you. You end up with a difficult sort of, because part of this stuff is a sort of coalition building kind of environment, right, where you're trying to help people out, and maybe getting involved with a paper makes them do better shit in future. How do I put this? Basically, good people end up by circumstance or design on bad shit, and there's rotten researchers who stumbled across great observations, or have gotten lucky. And you need to learn to divorce people's opinion of your work from their opinion of you. So any like persistent criticism over time is a heavy duty engagement with what you're actually doing. It's never going to be seen like that. And some people associate the open science movement with wretched bullying. But it's
have you
no one's telling you not to. No one's telling you not to publish. No one's telling you not to be involved in a broader conversation. The tone of this stuff is all really critical. I mean, it's the way that people do it, and they got persistent targets, etc., etc. Well, they honestly, legitimately feel like they should be persistent targets, and the language that people use occasionally is born of frustration and not the fact that they're sociopaths from the planet arsehole.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the other side of the coin is that a lot of this stuff, there's a lot of accusations around the open science movement of bullying, and yeah, you see a lot of stuff online, and yeah, you know, it's hard.
Yeah, well, an awful lot of complaints when it comes to like the former. Why don't you leave Brittany alone? Leave her alone. Insert researcher's name for Brittany. A lot of that stuff is a fear of criticism. This is an open market of ideas. I see people who are advocates for essentially the same shit, who are within the same social movement, who probably like each other personally, have disagreements all the fucking time. One monolithic focus of what everyone needs to think, and therefore deviations from that will be punished, is definitely fucking untrue when it comes to this. So the idea that there's an orthodoxy that's being enforced and people are being really nasty in the service of that because they want to sort of like signal that they are involved in improving science from the right perspective, that's fucking bullshit. These people argue all the time. Like I said before, it's only ever going to be an uneasy coalition. Your opinions on this stuff are really, really colored by the area that you work in. And that's something that people consistently manage to get. All to have the same opinions on science as someone who does questionnaire-based shit on MTurk. And that's your experimental interface, and you deal with different journals and different people and different expectations and different publication environments and different outcomes. You're going to end up having different perspectives on how shit needs to be changed on a structural level. So there's no agreement. Look at all the areas that don't have fucking preprints, for Christ's sake. I love preprints because I love preprints because I like reading stuff as soon as possible. It excites me more than anything else for something to be contemporary and straightforward, and because the vast majority of the time I'm interested only in the things that I can evaluate properly myself. If someone says, oh, I've got a preprint and according to quantum physics, everyone is made of corn.
You can evaluate that.
Probably bullshit because it's crazy, right? But I'm also not capable of evaluating it. Actually, of those arguments towards the corn proof, you can't, I can't. Most people actually can't. You've got to leave that shit up to. So the way that you understand how you see something like that is the thing that needs to change. So I don't understand a lot of the time people have got really highly focused specialized fields where if someone publishes it, there are like 100 people in the world who'd be super interested in it can immediately interface with what's written to tell whether or not it's a pile of shit. The other thing the only thing that's going to keep the accuracy, and that is the fact that the reputational cost of publishing some horseshit is really fucking high. You can't be an established researcher and just have some shit idea and chuck it out and see what happens. Even if you're trying to protect an idea and like wall it off, make sure you're the first person who publicly noticed it. If you publicly noticed it with a sack of shit, no one's going to remember you as being the first person who came up with it.
I don't think it's really a first mover advantage. I actually got my first.
We don't want to lose focus over the top of that stuff. What does all that mean? It's going to markedly between individual fields. Yeah. So there's a heterogeneity that is going to be necessary when people have arguments about this stuff. That's not an orthodoxy. And arguments that happen within something like that are not fucking... They're not of no consequence. So people who are trying to support something on one side or the other really believe the shit out of what they're talking about. And other people really believe that the language that they use is going to be supremely important, especially if they're talking about things casually. It's so much easier when we didn't have the internet. You could be a dick in your spare time.
I see so many
that was a joke. Don't write to me.
I see so many things on Twitter where people are arguing, and basically the thread always ends like, we're on the same side. We're actually on the same side. And
oh, for sure, yeah.
And I was just thinking back to preprints. I actually got my first invitation from an editor who came across a preprint going, hey, I saw your preprint from a pretty respectable journal. Hey, I saw your preprint. I think you should submit to us. We can't guarantee it'll get in, but we'll give it a good look in because we think it'll fit. So bam, preprints.
That's fantastic because they have an interest that's difficult for you to predict. You haven't wasted anybody else's time. They're interested in further evaluating the stuff that you've done. That seems ideal.
Yeah. It was,
I'm sure they're not going to shepherd it through the process. They're just going to chuck it through the door the same as everything else and then send it out to the right people. But yeah, you don't have to. That's the lovely thing. It creates a marketplace where, oh, for Christ's sake, shut up!
Is that a steam train? What's outside your door?
A fucking tram. People are driving the moving vans over the tracks. And pick one of the noisiest days of the year to record this. If I could go outside and flamethrower these people off the streets, I would. Ugly undergraduates with huge bulbous foreheads walking out where to put IKEA furniture. Jesus, they're like street lights, and they're all wearing baseball caps. I need to calm down. We're nearly done. I've been holding it together.
Well. we're nearly done. But yeah, speaking of preprints, I still would have a conversation at least once a week where I'm talking about it, and then the person goes, "Hang on, hold up a bit. Can I just ask you a question?" And I'm like, "Yeah." They're like, "What's a preprint?"
Yep. Never forget the people lose track of this all the time. Never forget there's a huge silent majority of people who are interested in science, people who do science, people who are like professionally associated with science who have no fucking idea what any of this stuff is. Because like the broad swathe of improvements in the last 10 years that are designed to improve the nature of the information that we collect are still widely unknown. A real fat chunk of people. You always see the same names popping up is because those people really give a shit. I mean, everyone else is just the reason we have a status quo in the first place is because it means that people have parameters to think anymore. It's comforting in the sense that, oh, okay, the boundaries of this have been established. Let's move within it. You know, it's comfortable. The people who are going to go, no, let's fuck with the interface. You have to really care.
Yeah,
you know, and it attracts some reasonably extreme people sometimes. You know, it attracts fractious, difficult people, at which I would occasionally include myself. And if you think, oh, you seem a little bit of a rascal, but you're quite nice, you haven't worked with me. I get very focused.
Now things are really getting off the tracks. Well, I think we'll.
What do you expect, man? We're going to do that. We're having some fun with this one. We're not going to do this every single day.
No. We might do it again. Might do it again in the future. Yeah, if you've been listening throughout the episode, we thank you, and for sending in your tweets and your corrections as well. It's been 50. Did you think we'd ever make it, James? I thought we'll have 10, and you know it'll just fall off from there.
Not quite sure. I'm not quite sure what the generative force was that kept us so regular for such a long time.
We've been we were going weekly for a little bit there.
Part of it was I think when we started, I was sort of either between jobs or waiting for paperwork to get processed.
That's right. Yeah.
It took months so I could start working, and I had time. And obviously, you live in a country with sane labor laws, so you have time by definition. I think it was more the fact that this is largely replaced our normal shit talking.
Yeah,
it's something that's sort of become a broader conversation, which makes it a little bit awkward. It's like, I'll talk to you about that on Friday. Like, okay. human interaction. I too do human normal interactions. As you fucking don't. I didn't ever really think we'd make it this long because I didn't think about it at all, not from that perspective. And I was like, does it have any longevity? It was like, well, you have to try it. This is the same about this. So it's on, it's on video. It doesn't matter if people don't have to. I was doing this, and I went, "Hey James, you should listen in." You go, "I got to work, motherfucker." I might be able to put it on, but sometimes I got to concentrate. I can't even stand people talking in the office around me when I'm trying to concentrate. You know, I do sit in a broom closet and gaffer tape the laptop to the fucking roof so I had enough room to be able to work in peace and quiet. And I go, everyone stop working and listen to our bullshit. So it swings and roundabouts, but that's the whole point of something like this. You've got to fucking try it.
Give it a go.
Run it out, man. And it proves it's the fact that we do not do any editing.
No, yes. And this... Doing it by video is absolute proof that we do next to no editing whatsoever. And when it comes to the actual podcast episode, which you're probably listening to right now, we are literally just going to post the audio from this video. Maybe a bit of editing and polishing up, but the actual content is going to be exactly the same. There's very few things that we've edited out. Yeah.
How many times has someone asked you what software you use for editing, or how much of it does it get cut?
I get a lot of questions. I have a few questions about software.
I've been asked that at least 12 times.
Really?
Yeah, like, what do you do? And if that's the stuff you're letting through, what are you cutting out?
Almost nothing. Yeah. Hardly anything at all. But I've actually tried.
I'm necessarily proud of that. It doesn't necessarily make it better.
Yeah, but I have been doing new software. Hindenburg is what I'm using now to do editing. It's
That does not sound safe. What does that do?
Yeah, and they even, like, the first thing on the website is, this is why we called our company after one of the world's most famous disasters.
Oh, okay, sure. When I'm done with my tour on Titanic Airlines and I get back to Boston on my fucking Malaysian flight, I'd be very happy to look up the Hindenburg software. What the shit?
Look, they're doing some good stuff.
What does it do, though? Seriously, with its terrible name?
It's mainly for broadcast. So for one of the big reasons they got together from reading their bio on the website, because that's what I do, because I'm a nerd like that, is that they put their stuff together in order to actually have affordable software for the third world to do radio production, to just basically to produce audio for both for podcast and for radio. But by the same token, it's actually quite a lightweight and relatively affordable way of doing basic editing. Because I was using iTunes and GarageBand in the past, but it just wasn't cutting it. And Hindenburg is a good compromise.
Did you switch to Audacity at some point?
No, I'm still using QuickTime for.
Oh, okay. Yeah, at some point in time, I think I just found you less annoying over time, and it's not the quality of your voice necessarily changed. But I know in the first few recordings that we did, you sounded. I remember reflecting on how squeaky and irritating and inappropriate I found you.
Yeah, that'll happen. But we're we've I think we've reached the end of our special 50th episode. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. If you're listening on the audio podcast, if you are, remember to continue to rate us.
You're a maniac, because it's just a video of two big swollen white boy heads.
Yes.
Oh shit.
And if you're curious as to how it actually works and what it actually looks like, the whole thing looks like, you can look at the link that we're going to put up for the video as well. But listeners, thank you for tuning in to Hertz 50. And James, here's to another 50 episodes.
Oh, that's what I call a decent, solid pre-registration.
Pre-registration. We're going to do another 50. It's going to happen, and we'll do something.
Yeah, we've got some vague plans for the next little while, we can tell people. More guests from probably people that you're less likely to have heard of. People who I think are cool. People who Dan thinks are cool, as much as he can have thoughts. From a variety of we're gonna experiment in the next little while with going a little bit outside the methodological science bubble, a little bit away from publishing. We're not going to do a general science podcast by any stretch of the imagination. It's still going to be what you expect so far, but we are going to fuck with it a bit in a while.
Yeah.
In a fun way. So, gird your loins, practice your scales, and make sure you clean your clarinet. Things at random at this point. I got to go.
Using words. Thanks for listening, everyone. We will be back very soon with episode 51 of Everything Hertz. Bye, everyone.
Yep. See ya.